But I feel like just looking at it, just as somebody that has paid a lot of attention to, television shows and how they're promoted and how they end up, actually being whenever they come out. I feel like from the types of promotion I see around this that I don't think Amazon's expecting it to be a hit.
Most people, when they talk about the all the books, the first book is the hardest one to get through. I enjoy it. I like it. I've read it several times, but I get what they're saying because like the first book is essentially a spaghetti western.
Yeah.
The Dark Tower is his ode to Lord of the Rings. Like that is his. It is his Lord of the Rings.
To progress their lives, like they use that as a method to communicate with each other, to get through different emotions they've been struggling with and holding on to for a long time. Like the whole show is really like just about like how like this like how we need art in our life and how we all interpret it differently and we need it for different reasons. You and Halen have got me into purchasing physical books again, and
I like the smell of them.
Yep,
books smell so good, don't they? All right,
they do. I got a really old one here too. That's I got a smell. Woo! I wasn't expecting that smell.
So now, as you know, we're going to do a podcast as far as books. Like, so. Like for me, I've been into books since I was a kid. Like, my parents owned a bookstore when I was young.
I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, like we lived in a town called Elkin, North Carolina, and my parents and another family, they went together and bought a bookstore in Elkin called the Rain Barrel, and that's kind of like my mom. Well, my dad too, but my mom was more of a big influence on books for me. And that was also like, so in Elkin, this was in, late 70s, early 80s, maybe, late 70s. Well, it was when Star Wars came out.
Oh,
the first Star Wars movie. Yeah. So my parents had the bookstore. And then like, you know how like, towns used to have like the downtown movie theater with the big like marquee with all the neon and all that stuff, like maybe 2 theaters. Well, there was one like about a block away. So when we got out of school, I guess my best friend at the time, Eddie, whose parents owned the bookstore with us. So we would get up and go to work with our moms, and then they would send us to the movie theater literally every day.
Oh, wow.
That was like, because you could walk a block and we would go in, it may have been 50 cents to go see the movie. So I probably watched Star Wars in this, it came out in May 77, I think. I probably watched it every other day for like months, maybe. Like, I mean, that's why I'm a big Star Wars fan, probably. But in the meantime, like, we would hang out in that bookstore, and I would just go find. Like, I really got into books with choose your own adventure books.
Yes, yeah.
I love. Like, I've still got a ton of choose your own adventure books from when I was a kid. Like, and those were great. And then, of course, I got introduced to the master, Stephen King.
Yeah.
When I was younger, and then just took off from there. So
it's too bad Halen couldn't be here today because he has a huge Choose Your Own Adventure collection.
Really, I love those books, man.
Yeah, that was one of the podcast ideas he was going to do was basically have someone go through.
Right.
He would read the narrative, and then you have to choose. He did one episode. It's really good.
Yeah, I probably got, I would say, I mean, I had more when I was younger, but I probably have saved about maybe 8 to 10 of them.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I was a kid, I remember having a bookshelf. There's no telling where they went, but like.
Yeah, I used to check those out from the school library.
Right.
No, it's funny. I actually worked at a Christian bookstore whenever I was a kid, but they didn't have a lot of like fiction books. Well, arguably, maybe they were all fiction.
Right. I got into this. I can't remember what was this guy's name. It's this present darkness. Um, Frank Peretti.
I know that
I don't
name.
know
Yeah.
if you know that name. He's a Christian author, but he came out with this series. I think there's 3 books, and it's called This Present Darkness, and then
Oh, I remember that book. Yeah, This Present
dude,
Darkness. Yeah.
like I was never big into like any of the Christian stuff, but a friend told me about them, and I like
Yeah.
checked it out and I read them. Dude, those books are freaking amazing. Like
Oh,
if
really?
you get past the like
Yeah.
the Christian like preachy stuff, it is basically like so everybody has an angel and a demon, and they're like basically I guess on each shoulder or whatever hanging around, but they fight each other.
Hmm.
And like in the background, like that you can't see, there are demons and angels like fighting like
Yeah.
like swords. It's really high fantasy type stuff. And like the whole premise it's been a long time, but the whole premise is they were trying to save the soul of somebody, and like I mean it was fantastic. Like just the cool imagery and like like the wars that were going on between like the angels and the demons and all that stuff. It was really cool. Like you didn't come off as a Christian book essentially.
Yeah. I do remember this book. My uncle had this series. I remember seeing it at his house. I was too young to read it back then, and I haven't thought about it really since then. But yeah, I do remember these books.
They're like I don't know, if I pick them up again, maybe, but like they were definitely cool to read. I don't know how well they age. It's been so long since I've read them,
Yeah.
but I don't know how well they've aged or not. But
Because of it's funny. So I'm not religious now, but I grew up in that atmosphere, and I still have like a fondness for some of this stuff because I grew up around it. Like some of the Christian rock bands and stuff I remember from whenever I was a teenager, and the TV shows and stuff like that. Sometimes when I see it, I'm like nostalgic for it. It's
right,
in a weird way. I remember this cover, this exact cover. Um, but
I went I
where?
went to a you ever heard of Striper?
Oh yeah,
I went
yeah.
to a Striper concert when I
To
was
hell
like
with the devil.
to hell with the devil. Yeah, I've still it's got to be somewhere around here. They would throw out the little mini Gideon Bibles
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
into the crowd and
New
stuff. And I
Testaments or
oh
something.
yeah, I
Yeah.
picked one up and I was like, oh cool, like
Yeah.
very very strange.
Um. Yeah, they had some good songs. Promise Me, or I can't remember.
Yeah, very very hair bandy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I got into them like way after the fact. A buddy of mine who I still talk to, Matt Westmoreland, a buddy of mine, he got into Striper like unironically, and then he turned me on to them, and I just thought it was funny, but
Right.
but still jamming at the same time.
Well, that's as a '80s like hair
Yeah.
metal kind of guy, like I was listening to all that stuff, and then I heard them.
Yeah.
He had they had the big hair and the spandex, and like, he had the like crazy voice, and like I
Yeah.
listened to the song and then like I didn't realize it at first, and then like you kind of listen to it and you're like, hold on now, they're talking about like God and getting saved and all this stuff. I'm like, and then you kind of research it, and then a friend of mine was like, "Hey man, they're playing in Charlotte. We should go see them." I was like, "Well, why not?"
That's
It
pretty
was
neat.
definitely different. Yeah, I mean,
That's pretty neat. I definitely would have went if I had the chance. So where do you go to buy used books? Do you have like a spot? You do a lot of audiobooks.
well, yeah, I do now. Now I don't know. Used to there was a place here in Seneca that had a pretty big used book selection, but they closed.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a used bookstore here in Anderson that was pretty famous used bookstore, local, famous,
yeah.
and it recently closed down.
Is that the place down at the bottom of that hill
It's a
on
big yellow house. It's
the
like
big yellow house? Yeah, I
yeah,
saw that they were closing.
yeah, yeah. I used to go in
Um,
there and get comics.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't, now, I mean, I guess if online would pretty much be,
that's what I've been doing is online.
yeah. I'll buy like a new book. I just bought a new book through Amazon. Um, my issue with like going to, I'm not to throw them under the bus, but Books a Million in Anderson
Yeah,
is like just the upcharge. Like
yeah.
the book I bought a book called Wendy's Final Task. It's a Stephen King and this other guy wrote a series of 3 books together. And the last book just came out, and it was almost a $15 difference between buying it on Amazon and buying it at
I
Books a
believe it.
Million.
Yeah,
Um,
I was gonna
and so
get
it,
I was gonna get the Stormlight Archive books from Books a Million just because I didn't want to wait on them to come in. And whenever I saw the
right,
price difference, I was just like, "There's no way, there's no way it's worth it. It's like half price
right.
almost."
I don't, those places. I don't see how they stay in business. I honestly don't. Like, I mean, we've talked about on the D&D show. Um, the difference in the price of a book. At Books a Million was probably $20
Yeah,
between them and Amazon. It's like, wow, like I don't. I mean, I guess unless you're just desperate. I mean, I go into Books a Million, I'll look around, and I'll go to other bookstores like Barnes and Noble and
yeah.
whatever to look around. And then if I see something, I'll be like, let's see, check out what's on Amazon,
They
and then I'll wind up buying it.
they probably price match. So
They
like
probably
if you're
do.
in that scenario, you might could work that out. I don't know. But I thought I would try Second and Charles because they have a big used book selection.
Right.
And I found the 4th book of the Stormlight Archive in the used book section. It was pretty beat up, and it was the exact same price as the new copy on Amazon. Exact same price. And if it had been one of the earlier books, I might would have bought it just because I'm kind of worried that I'm not going to get. I want all the books to match on the shelf, and so I'm trying to get the
Right.
same version. And
Right.
I'm worried that by the time I read, through them, and I get to the 4th book, I'm not going to be able to get that book anymore in the same version, in the same hardcover version.
Right.
But maybe that book's just so popular. Those books are so popular, I don't even have to worry about that. But yeah, I couldn't see buying a pretty beat up used copy for the exact same price that you can get on Amazon.
Yeah.
Even
No,
though
I agree.
it's going to be a little while before I get to that, but I've been ordering from what is the name of this website? I just like Googled like used books online, and
There's like Goodreads, I think. I think
yeah,
they sell.
I haven't looked at Goodreads yet. I've looked at Goodreads for suggestions. They do like a suggestion thing. But Abbey Books is what I've been buying.
Okay.
But there's like no telling what you're going to get when you order it.
Right. Oh, Thrift Books is the other one I was thinking of.
Thrift Books. Let me look at that.
Yeah.
That was another thing I tried to do. I tried to go to Goodwill on Sunday to see if I could just get lucky.
Right.
And I did see a copy of Interview with the Vampire, the first book.
Right.
But I didn't want to pick up just one book, and they didn't have anything else I was interested in, so I set it back down.
So I've read like most of that series of books, and the first few books, yeah, fantastic. She got a little weird there toward in her later life, like more weird than normal. And some of them, like, I don't know. I think she tried to like do the whole like try to shock people with some of the stuff that was in her books.
Yeah.
And like instead of like focusing on the characters and story and all that stuff, she wanted to like I don't know. They were just there was some weird shit that happened in some of her later books, like but like Interview with the Vampire and the Vampire Lestat, and then I think there's four originals. There's Interview, Vampire Lestat, Queen of the Damned, and something else. Those four books are like hella awesome, like really really good. Um, and then after that, those four, then she kind of went a little bit weird. But I see that they're redoing Interview with the Vampire. I don't know. I think it's going to be a TV show though. It's not going to be a movie, or maybe it's the Vampire Lestat. But either way, I see that they're redoing some of that stuff. So
Yeah, that'd be cool. I don't know. Maybe I should have picked up that copy. It's probably still there. The fourth book that you were looking for is called The Tale of the Body Thief.
yeah, Tell a Body Thief. That's right.
Yeah. I've never read any
Very
of those.
good.
I've never even seen the movie.
I mean, the movie's good. I mean, it's really well done, but it's, well, different than the book, but, almost every movie and book is completely different. So,
Yeah.
but they did it was, what was that? Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt and
Yeah. It's got like a
yeah, it's got a huge cast in it. Like,
it's got a huge cast.
yeah. And, coming from Louisiana, is a big Louisiana type tale. So it kind of was cool.
That's cool.
As far as being from Louisiana,
Yeah.
you can go down and see some of the sights in New Orleans from the books and stuff. So,
I'm gonna go back and get it. I don't know. I feel like I'm interested in like a lot of different series right now, and I have like a lot of catch up to do because,
right.
like you and Halen have read so many different like classic series, and I feel like I'm never gonna catch up to you guys. And so that was one that I was just like, do I want to sacrifice, some other, say, Dark Tower series to read these? Like, probably not. I don't know, but I'm going to start a collection of like hopefuls. Like, I'll get to these one day.
Right. I mean, that's definitely something worth reading.
Yeah.
But if you were trying to consider reading like you said, the Dark Tower or like the Lord of the Rings trilogy or anything like that,
I've read the Lord of the Rings. I've read the Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
That stuff is another step, but like
the Lord of the Rings is hard to read, by the way.
Oh, it is.
It's hard to read because there's just like long prose about like them singing and stuff like that. Like,
right? If you watch the movies, if you watch the extended cut, they throw in a couple of those songs, I guess, that they cut out from the theatrical releases. But like in the book, like it seems like every other chapter they're singing some kind of song about something. And like what's crazy is like when I think about that stuff, like not only did he write the books, but he came up with different languages and he wrote a bunch of songs. All for one book. Like that's crazy. Like
it is wild. It is wild. Like but that's why like basically every fantasy writer like since him has credited him because no one did world building.
It is ridiculous. Like I can't imagine like, hey, I'm going to write a series of books, but I'm going to have to come up with a couple different languages from scratch. I'm going to have to write different songs from scratch and all this stuff, and then just like.
But what makes it difficult is like there's parts where you get like a paragraph of like what happened in the last week, and then 3 pages of of a song. It's like
right, exactly.
But I'm excited about the new Amazon series. Have you looked at that?
Yes. Now I was going to say, have you read the Silmarillion at all?
No, I haven't read that at all. I've only read the Hobbit and the 3 Lord of the Rings books.
So the Silmarillion reads like the Bible. It's all so and so begot so and so begot so and so begot so and so, and it just like
Yeah.
mind-numbingly goes through like hundreds of years of family tree, and you're just like, what the hell am I reading? Like, but then like there'll be adventure, and then
Yeah.
it'll just cut away, and it'll go back to like, I mean, elves live thousands of years, and I think they named every elf that's ever lived in Middle Earth in that book, and it's like, oh my god, like it's crazy. And that show
Yeah.
is built off of the Cimmerillion. So I'm like, oh my god, what the hell are they going to do? Like,
It's
either going to be a lot of like explanation about people, or they're just going to do their own thing. I've heard kind of they're doing their own thing.
That's what I think. Yeah. I think they're I think that the Silmarillion, I've never read it, but just from what you just said and what I've heard about it, I think that it leaves enough there that they can kind of just make a show that is just in the blanks. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that's what they're going to do.
The one thing I've read about the show is like, if you take the book takes place over thousands of years, because again, elves like Elrond is thousands of years old.
Right. Yeah.
And so like in that show, they show him as a younger person. And like, from what I've read, as far as it, like, so if you did the show based on the book, human characters wouldn't last long at all, because I mean, they, their life expectancy was probably 40, 50 years old at that time, something like that. So like they were like, well, we can't like go through this series and keep replacing actors and characters for humans like every episode. So I think what they did is they condensed everything down into one time period. Yeah. So the humans could be there along with the elves. And some of the feedback from the show is a lot of people didn't like that, because they condensed thousands of years into like a 50-year time frame or something.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, like, everyone's always complaining about everything, and then you watch it and it's like, oh, that wasn't too bad.
So I feel like I have a suspicion. All right, so I'm optimistic. I want it to be good. Too. I'm super hopeful. I'm going to be positive about it until I watch it and it's awful. And even if it's just okay, I'll probably give it a few extra points just because I just want it. I want more Lord of the Rings. I can't wait to watch it. Yes. But I feel like, just looking at it, just as somebody that has paid a lot of attention to, television shows and how they're promoted and how they end up, actually being whenever they come out, I feel like from the types of promotion I see around this, that I don't think Amazon's expecting it to be a hit. I think that
it's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah, like I basically only see ads for it like online, like
right.
And not even like I don't see like YouTube ads for it or anything like that.
No,
I only
exactly.
see it on Amazon products,
Right.
And so I think that they're like, hey, we had the rights to do this. We're going to do something with it. But we're not. I don't think they're willing to like go all in and say this is going to be their Amazon magnum opus.
Right. Well, they had. Speaking of Dark Tower, they have the rights to Dark Tower, and they filmed. They announced they were doing a show, and they filmed the pilot, and then they were like, nope, we're just going to cancel it before it even aired. That sucks, because I think they could have done a good job with it, and the casting they had from it was pretty good.
They were working on a Lord of the Rings MMO. Amazon was.
Yes.
There's already a Lord of the Rings MMO that is actually still, it's old. It's really old and it looks really dated, but they're still releasing patches for it and people still play it. But Amazon was working on a new one, and I thought for sure it was going to come out whenever the show came out, but they postponed it. Yeah, I don't, and I haven't even heard anything about it since they postponed it. I don't even think they had anything done enough to give any like still images or anything. I don't think they actually had done any work on it. So,
were you a fan of like now? What am I thinking of? I just lost them. train of thought.
Amazon, Lord of the Rings, MMO.
Yeah, they were doing. Amazon was going to do something.
The
I don't know. I can't think of it.
The most recent MMO they released, New Worlds.
Harry Potter. Do you do Harry Potter or anything?
No, I have never read a book and I've never watched a movie. I don't know. Only thing I know about Harry Potter, I've just seen from, it's obviously it's huge part of pop culture, but I've never watched any of it or read anything.
Sony just released some of the gameplay from they're having a big MMO open world game where you can create a wizard, or I don't know if you can create a bad like Death Eater type guy or not, but apparently I haven't watched it yet. They just released some of the game footage of it. And it's supposed to be amazing. Like, I mean, it's a huge world, so I can't imagine how good that game will be.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I should have read Harry Potter whenever it was popular. I don't see myself reading it now, and I have maybe I might watch the movies. I don't know.
Well, now see with kids, like I read the books when it came out, but now like when my son got into it, like we started watching it and reading it together, and now he's read. Well, I won't say he's read. He goes to bed every night. He listens to the audiobook to fall asleep to. So he's listened to the books like several times. And that's another one where the books are, the movies are really good. And I don't take anything away from them because they are really good. But the books, like, so much more stuff in them. And they're really, I mean, again, they age. It's kind of cool. Like, I read them as they came out. And the first book starts out as a kid's book, and by the time you get to the last book, it's like she aged with the reader being when it first came out at 7 or 8 compared to the reader when the last book came out, which is a teenager, early 20s type thing. And you can tell like she changed the books to age with the original reader. It's pretty cool, like because the last few books are very dark and very like very adultish, but still kid friendly. But like,
so what age do you think? Because that's one of the things I was going to talk about on this episode is two of the books I ordered are books I ordered because I thought I might try to read them to Elliot, but I think he's still too young to like listen to a book without pictures.
Right.
But at what age do you think is good to kind of start doing that?
I don't know. Like, I mean, I started reading books like non-picture books, like Harry Potter was probably the first book we read, which was, I don't know, he probably was 6 or 7 maybe when we first started reading Harry Potter.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can tell now as an 11-year-old, Cooper's like understands them a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Because there's, just like any like watching SpongeBob or any of those cartoons, there's like the stuff that the kids get, and then there's a lot of stuff that they throw in there that the adults get that are very like very adultish. And that's kind of the same thing with those. You read through it, and as a kid you get a lot out of it, but when you get older you realize there's a lot more to it. But like I said, if you start out with the first book, it's very much a 6, 7, 8-year-old type kid book. Like it's very kid friendly and stuff.
I probably could get my sister read all those books. She probably would give me a copy to read to him, but I might just order that one too.
Yeah, they're good. I mean, they're really very good. And then you can order. They have 2 different versions. You have the American version, then you have the English, British versions, which are, I mean, they're basically the same, but they change a lot of the slang.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's probably just some maybe they
Right.
call something.
Well, you know, the first book here is called The Sorcerer's Stone,
Mm-hmm.
but the real book is called The Philosopher's Stone.
Oh wow.
Um, but in America, we think of as a
Yeah.
philosopher as something different than what they think of
Huh.
as philosopher. So now we get, you know, our version of it, which is kind of cool.
So
And the audiobooks are really good because, you know, they got a British guy reading it and you get the accent and all that stuff. And, you know, he does a pretty good job of them.
well, I ordered The Hobbit and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Both very good.
Yeah, and I remember I like The Hobbit better now as an adult, but I remember when I was a kid, I liked The Lion, the Witch, and the
Right.
Wardrobe better. Um,
Yes.
and those are both books that I read in elementary school, but I don't know how old I was. But they were like required reading when I was a kid.
Right.
And so I thought maybe I could start reading. I think he would have an easier time understanding The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe than The Hobbit.
Right.
But I probably still have a year or so. So he's about to turn 4, so I probably need to start at like 5 or 6.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I can't wait to do that with him to go through those books. But let me read something to you real quick. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. So
Best opening of any series of books ever.
So I picked up The Gunslinger. I'm finally going to do it. You've been telling me to start this for years,
Yes.
and I've been scared to do it because I feel like I have to read like every other Stephen King book to really get the full experience, but I'm just going to try to read the main I'm just going to try to read the
So
main line.
I'm trying to see. Does that say it's the revised version? Or
It's a pretty beat up copy. It doesn't say it's the revised version. But it looks like, so I'll show you the table of context. It looks like it's just these items.
yeah. I don't know.
So the gunslinger, the way station, the oracle and the mountains, the slow mutants, the gunslinger and the dark man, and then the afterward.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I guess it's not like in chapters. It's just each of these.
So I think we talked about it maybe once before. So like the Dark Tower when he originally wrote it was kind of like a one-off thing, but he wrote it for a magazine and it came out in different editions in the magazine.
Yeah.
And then that was a story in its own. It didn't have anything else. And so then like years later he he thought about it and thought that this could be more and more. So the Dark Tower is his ode to Lord of the Rings. Like that is his, you know, Magnus Opum, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like it is his Lord of the Rings. And so what he did was he released the Dark Tower or released the Gunslinger in a book form, and then years later he went back and he did a revised version of the Gunslinger that he put more stuff in to tie in to the following 6 books. So there's one and both of them are really good, but the revised version like gives you foreshadowing more to things that happens in the other books, whereas the original version doesn't have that stuff. But it still gives you, either way, you still get a good, you know, idea of what the whole story is.
I'm guessing this is the unrevised version.
Now, the thing I sent you in Google Drive is the revised version, so you can read and listen. But yeah, there's like I think it's the 4th book. The Wizard and Glass book is a prequel type book from when Roland, who's the gunslinger, was younger and just becoming a gunslinger.
Yeah.
And so like in the Gunslinger book, he goes back and puts some things that from that book, like characters and things like that, that you're like, oh, okay, which you wouldn't know anyway on your first read, but
right, yeah.
But it's either way, and again, like
Well,
if
now
you,
this does say the Dark Tower on the cover, and at the time that he was releasing it for the
it was not the
magazine, it
Dark
was not the
Tower, it's
Dark
just
Tower.
right.
Yeah,
So it could be.
So this could be, yeah.
But now they, the one thing, like I'm in a Stephen King. I'm like, obviously, I'm a big Stephen King fangirl, but like I'm in a Stephen King fan group, and most people when they talk about the all the books, the first book is the hardest one to get through. I enjoy it. I like it. I've read it several times, but I get what they're saying because like the first book is essentially a spaghetti western.
Yeah.
With some
with
crazy,
the crows. Yeah, I read the
with
comic.
some crazy shit.
Yeah.
But then the following books, it just goes completely like to left field, right field, whatever. And it's hard to describe like what that series. It's a science fiction, western, horror. Like I don't know, it encompasses everything. Whereas the first book, it's more of just like I said, more of a western with some kind of weird shit thrown in there.
Well, understanding its history and like how it came to be, like I understand why that is. I am excited to read it. I was planning to make it my third read, so right now both you and I are reading the Way of Kings, and my plan was because I'm really enjoying the Way of Kings, but I am kind of like getting burnt out. It's a long ass book.
It's long. Very long. Okay, I finished section 2 today.
Yeah.
Which was where Dalinar told named Mirian or something.
We'll try not to give like any major spoilers.
Right. But it's like where he told her that he wanted to abdicate his position to his son. And that's kind of where I ended. I was meant to ask you, and I haven't looked this up, but I feel like were there other books that he wrote about this world that came out before this? Because I feel like there's a lot of stuff he talks about that you should know.
It's another book I picked up. I haven't read this. I haven't read any of this, but I picked up the first book of the Mistborn.
That's why I was wondering if that's like, because they talk about like
it's
shard bearers and all this. Like you're supposed to already know most of this stuff, and I feel like there should be a book that explains some of this stuff more.
I don't think so. So here's the thing. So Sanderson is trying to do sort of a Stephen King style thing where all these books are part of this universe called the Casimir, or whatever it is.
Right.
And like to anybody listening to the pod, like both David and I are both brand new to Sanderson. We're starting with the Way of Kings, I think, right? You haven't read anything, Brandon Sanderson?
I haven't read anything else, no.
But my understanding is that this world in Mistborn is not necessarily connected to that world, other than that they both exist in this same like sort of like planar universe,
Right.
But I think that's the thing about the Way of Kings is that like the book is just written in such a way that like they talk about things as if you're aware of them, but you're really not. You're really becoming aware as the book goes on,
Right.
And that's kind of like, I don't know how common that is in like other like high fantasy stuff, but like that's I don't know, but that's part of to me, that's what this first book is all about, is like learning the world, because the plot is kind of slow. Like things are happening, but it's very slow. Like nothing major has happened. Like we're not worried about the universe ending or the world's going to end or anything like that. It's just, you're basically just looking at like three different perspectives of this world, and you're learning about the world as they go through their like story. And where I'm at in the book, the three stories are basically only barely beginning to touch each other. Like, and you're almost caught up to me because I read, so over the weekend, I read like several chapters in a row. And I was really proud of myself because I had got back into reading by listening to audiobooks, and I like never, as an adult, I've just never found the time to actually physically read anything. But then this weekend I read like a whole bunch of chapters, like back to back, like actually physically sat down and read. And I think it's because I've been listening to audiobooks on the drive. It gets me into the story, and then on the weekends when I have time, I'm like, oh, I want to sit down and read a few chapters of that. But after this weekend, I've not been listening to the book on my drive. I was listening to a little bit as I fell asleep every night. I haven't been listening to it at night. I'm not like, I like the book, but I'm at the point now where I'm like, I got to be getting close to the end. Like
right. That's why I kept saying, I was listening to it and I was like, I got to the last chapter I was on. That chapter was like an hour and 15 minutes. I'm like, oh my God. So like, in Audible, you can hit chapters and look at where your progress. I was like halfway. I wasn't even halfway through the book. I was like, holy crap. Like,
yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff that he talks about, like, especially, what are they called? Which I'm assuming is the 10 knights that start out at the beginning of the book that like walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they leave one to like, I guess in hell or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm assuming that's the people that they're talking about, like the whatever bringers. I can't remember what they were called. The void bringers.
The void bringers, I think, are like the things that those people were like fighting. They're not light bringers.
They're not but like, okay, so the last thing like that, the Yasna or whatever was saying that she saw a picture of some ancient text. The void bringers looked like what were they? The cavern fiends or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, that is right. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so this is starting to bring some stuff together. But then like the visions that Dalinar keeps having, I'm assuming is from when these 10 knights that were the protectors of everybody.
They were still like
up and going
and protecting people. Yeah.
So you were saying that he has the one vision that's very detailed. So that was the one where he meets the girl, the woman, and then the other guy, and like he's like some like farm hand or something, but he knows how to fight, and they're all like, "What the?" They're all
like, "How'd you learn how to do that?"
Right. So I'm like, he's setting all this stuff up, and like, I feel like it's all going to come together in like this great thing, but like, it's like, oh my God, it's so slow at some points, and
it's just a long book, man. It's just a long book. I like the book. It's just man. I mean, it's just over 1,000 pages. It's like 1,005 pages or something like that. I don't know how many pages I'm in, but I'm past halfway. But I'm not way past halfway. You're at about halfway.
Right.
You're getting close to halfway. I'm not far past you. It's because I started slowing down. I think
he's a very good writer.
Yeah,
I'd say. He's a good writer.
I feel like he has like a really he has a really I don't know what the word is, but he doesn't write in like a lot of like explanatory, like, describing things, or like he doesn't write about like, what the room looks like, or he leaves all that up to you to figure out. But everything he says is important because everything is moving the story along. Or otherwise he wouldn't write a sentence about it. You know what I mean? Like it's very like utilitarian. He's like a very utilitarian writer. Like every sentence has a purpose, or he didn't write it.
Right.
and there's 1,000 pages of that, so it's 1,000 pages of paying attention.
Right. Like one thing with Stephen King, like he's got several books that are over 1,000 pages. He is very detailed. Like he will describe what's in a room for 20 pages. And that makes up the 1,000-something pages. But yeah, like
Right.
here, it's just story. There's no like explanation. There's no nothing. It's like, bam, here you go.
Yeah.
And then
who do you like so far? Like, what chapters are you excited whenever you get to it?
I like the Catalan.
Yeah.
Kaladin, yeah, those then the Bridge Crew, those are really good.
Yeah.
Then I like the Dalinar stuff, like
yeah,
because I know that's. I keep thinking like they bring Kaladin and he's now in this same camp with. I feel like they're all going to come together before too much longer.
Yeah,
because there's like there was a part in the book where Dalinar and his son and their troops were going to go attack the and try to get the gemstone from the one thing, and his lieutenant's like, we need a real bridge crew and not the thing. And I was like, oh, they're gonna go get Kaladin.
Me too.
Yeah, they didn't. And I was like, I knew that was gonna happen, but I feel like that is gonna happen at some point.
It's got to. Yeah, it's
the Dalinar and Kaladin and all them are gonna be whatever.
Yeah, and then Yasna is connected to to Dalinar also.
Right.
It's like his niece or something.
His niece. And then his brother's widow, I think they're gonna be together at some point and all that stuff.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Oh, and like how he's like forgotten about his wife.
That's weird too. Like,
yeah, they're not.
He doesn't explain that at all. It's just like, oh, I was married, but I have no idea who she was, what she looked like, or anything. And I'm like,
it comes up again, weird. But it's still not explained. But yeah, it's coming up enough now that I know that it's going to be a major plot point at some point. But I hit a few parts this weekend that I'll be excited for you to get to. I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a few parts that like Yasna's badass. There's definitely a scene where they kind of reveal like kind of what they're gonna. I'm sure there's a whole book just on her. And then
the heretic.
Yeah, and then I also hit a point. I also hit a point where I was like okay with Kaladin, but he was my least favorite story in the first part.
It was a little boring at first.
Yeah,
I will say that.
Where I'm at now in the third part, he's the most interesting story.
Right.
Is Kaladin. Kaladin, they are doing a lot more flashbacks where you're getting the story of his father, which actually it goes in like kind of a surprising direction. The story with his father. And also as Kaladin gets older, you see how his like perspective of his dad changes. And then he's still where I'm at in the flashbacks. He's still at a point where he's trying to make a decision about being a soldier or being a surgeon. Right. And I don't see how, like, I'm waiting for the turning point, like when he ends
where
up being
he becomes a soldier.
Right.
That's me too. I'm like, what the hell?
What's the lady's name that is stealing that's trying to steal from Yasna?
Oh yeah, I can't remember her name.
Hang on, I'm looking up a character's.
Their whole family is
Shallan. Shallan.
Yeah.
Shallan. I read a part the other day, and I almost sent you a message, and I didn't. But I read a part the other day where like it was like a moment in a TV show where you're like you see a character's doing something that's going to be a huge mistake, and you're like no.
Right.
And then I'm like, why'd you do it?
Yeah, there's the one part I got to so in the first two parts or whatever, you had those little sections where you had the last words of the people that were dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now it's kind of changed to where you have these interludes of different like characters.
Mm-hmm.
So the last thing I was listening to today was a girl and her she calls him her father, but it's not her father. He's like her trainer to become a master like tradesman.
Yeah.
And they go to this one part of this world where like the grass doesn't move out of the way, and like the people are more like we are.
Yeah, and all the plants and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and like they're like, they don't use, there's no, she's like, there's no sprint here.
Yeah.
There's none of that stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is different.
Yeah.
And then it just ends. You're just like, okay, what the hell was that shit? Like, is this all coming back together at some point? Like,
yeah.
And then I think, there's like supposed to be what, 7 books?
I think there's going to be 10.
He's done.
I think
there's 10. And he's done what, 4 or 5
he's
now?
He's done 4. Yeah.
So I keep thinking like, they're introducing this stuff, and I'm like, God, we got like 10 more books. Like,
yeah,
he could drop this for the next 4 books, and then it just shows up in book 5, and you're just like, oh shit, yeah, I remember that from 3 books ago. Because you expect things to wrap up, but when you're going through a series, that doesn't necessarily mean shit's going to wrap up at the end of the book.
I don't think at the end of this book, I'm not expecting. I think at the end of this book, we're going to kind of find out. I think we're going to get some glimpse of what to expect in the next couple books, and I think that there'll be some arc of each character's story will come to a close, and I think that some of the characters will meet each other, and then it'll probably just end, and then the next book will pick up from Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to expect. I definitely like it, but I was worried about getting burnt out. I don't want to read the second book right after the first. I want to read something else. And originally I was going to pick up, because I read book 1 of this Star Trek series, Prey. And so I went ahead and ordered book 2 and book 3, just because it was another case of like, well, if I have book 1, I need to get the other 2 before they're like hard to find. But I don't think I am. I think I'm going to start with the Dark Tower. I think you've got me hooked on that. So
first book is very easy to get through because it's it's shorter, and it's then like they get progressively longer as it goes along. But yeah, I mean, you'll probably blow through the Gunslinger. It's like I said, it is fantastic. Like so good, especially once you get past the first book, and then the more of the world building begins, then it just explodes. You're just like, what the? It's just crazy. And then once you get to the 6th and 7th book, it just goes off the rails, and you're just like, wow, this is like, I don't know what I'm going to read next. I might, I don't know. One thing I will suggest, if for the next show, if you want to do it, is on that in those books. There's a book called now the one issue with this download is the books aren't broken down by chapter. It's like the book is just one file. So like there is a book in that called it's called Just After Sunset. And in that book there is a story called N. The
letter N.
It is. Yeah, it's just the letter N. It should be. It was one of his later books. Yeah, the 2008 Just After Sunset.
I'll find it. I'll find it in the table of contents, and then I'll.
It's probably like probably about halfway into the book. Now, one thing that would be kind of cool is to do like maybe some short stories every now and then, because we can. Those are really easy to get through.
Yeah,
but in like it's so hard to like Stephen King. You know, he's not a. When people say I don't like horror, so I don't read Stephen King. Stephen King's not necessarily a horror writer. Like he's got 11/22/63. That's not a horror book. Like
No,
he's
not at
got a
all.
lot of
Yeah.
he's got a lot of really like good books.
Yeah.
This story is, I don't consider it really horror, but it is so disturbing and like dark, and it has a lot to do with OCD. And like it's just really good. He's got maybe 5 or 6 different books of short stories, and out of all those books, it is by far my favorite short story, and it ranks up there even with the novels. But it's shorter. But I think you would like it. I think you would really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'll
and if you
listen
want to
to
listen
it.
to it, maybe we can talk about it in the next episode or two.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And then I'll come up with, if you're going to read The Dark Tower, I'll come up with you can go online and find like the lists that are like, hey, this is the list you need to read. And most of those are bullshit because they take, I mean, if you wanted to take basically every book he's ever written and you could somehow tie it into The Dark Tower. So that's kind of stupid. But like I said before, like even when you get into the parts of the story where it really goes into another one of his books, it describes that, kind of like a synopsis almost of said book.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's a point where the main characters are in the world of The Stand, where, everyone in the world's dead essentially, but they wind up in that world. Well, you don't necessarily have to have read The Stand, because he tells you, like, it's not really a spoiler, but they find a newspaper. The characters find a newspaper, and it talks about, hey, this killer flu is like, ravaging, everything, and so yeah, I mean, The Stand is a great book, but you don't necessarily have to read it to read The Dark Tower, because it's not, the details aren't as important as what essentially the book is about.
Yeah.
And there's a few of those that come up. There's not really anything that you have to say like, oh, you have to read this or you won't understand it at all. They do a good job. The one book I would say, out of every Stephen King book, if you want to read, would be Salem's Lot, because it does come into play a lot in the later books. But other than that, I mean, you can just read the Dark Tower books. Like,
yeah, that's my plan right now. Depending on how fast it goes, I may throw Salem's Lot in there too.
And then there's the Wind Through the Keyhole book, which is kind of like a 4.5. But you don't necessarily have to read that. You can skip over that and you can read that later, because it doesn't really have anything to do with the overall story. But I mean, I'm excited. Like, that is so good. I can't, like, so good. But yeah. So now I'm listening to a podcast. It's called The Cast of Ka.
Yeah.
Which Ka is like, you'll learn all about Ka with the, Ka is like destiny, kind of like another word for destiny. And they go book to book, like chapter by chapter, and just, each week or about every 2 weeks or so, they'll say, we're going to read this chapter or these 2 chapters, and they break it down. So I'm kind of going slowly along with them too. But I think they're on we just started the fifth book. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, that's, that's pretty cool. They do a really good job of explaining a lot of stuff that you don't catch, but I wouldn't necessarily like, a lot of spoilers, so you wouldn't necessarily want to listen to it before you read the book. But like, like I've read or / listened to The Dark Tower probably 7 times.
Oh, wow.
And since I've started listening to them, I've picked up on things. I'm like, wow, I never thought of that, or like, wow, that's kind of cool, or different things like that. So that's something good to do after you read everything, I think.
Well,
but like,
and I'll like as I listen to it, I'll talk about it with you here too.
Yeah. The audiobooks, which sucks, is so you got, there's 7 books. I think it's the first 3 or the first 4. I can't remember. This guy does the narration, and he's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like this guy, Frank Mueller. And then he got in a motorcycle wreck, and then he eventually died later. But so they switched to a different guy. And he's really good too, but like one of the main characters in the story, this guy Eddie, he is like New York, like Brooklyn, like, and he's got the way, like the Brooklyn, New York talk.
Yeah.
And the first guy, like, he nails it. Like, he is like, he will be Eddie forever for me, like listening to him. And the other guy doesn't quite capture that voice. It's still good, but it's different. But now, like I think I told you this before, he does Roland, the main character. Like when I listen or when I think of Roland, I think of him, not the first guy. So it kind of blends, but it's definitely like it's a big culture shock kind of thing. Like you're listening, especially if you're doing it back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
Because you like finish one book and then you go to the next book and it's completely different. And you're like, whoa, like this I got to get used to this for like half a book before I, get into it. But luckily, like I said, the second guy is really good. He does a lot of the other King books too. Both of the guys that did, they do a lot of the Stephen King books. So just watch out for that if you're listening to it. And yeah, I mean,
I'll definitely keep you updated on it. Do you want to save?
I did.
Do you want to save Station 11 for next week, or do you want to do it? You want to do it and close out this episode?
There's a couple things about Station 11 that are
okay.
I like the show. I really liked it.
Yeah.
One thing that bothers me about the last 2 episodes, I guess, is like the prophet.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so spoiler for anybody out there that hasn't watched the show.
So we're going to talk about Station 11, and then we'll round this out at the end of the show. Station 11, HBO series. I've never read the book by Emily Mendel, but I love the show so much that now I want to. So that was what I put in the show notes is I think I'm going to pick up The Glass Hotel, but when am I going to find this is it? See, this is it. I'm learning about all these books and I got no time to read all these things.
Right.
But I think I'm going to be amazed at how fast books go by after I'm done with the Stormlight Archive book, because it's just so long that I think whenever I listen to The Gunslinger, I'm going to be amazed at how fast it goes.
Right.
But so yeah,
but definitely if you haven't watched it or haven't read it,
we're about to talk. We're about to talk about some spoilers. Yeah, so it's good we saved it for the end.
So the prophet.
Yeah.
So in the one episode, you find out that like he comes to that place where David Cross is living, and they basically steal the kids.
Yeah.
Right. And then like this guy, the prophet, in that one episode, sends these kids back with the bomb strapped to them to like blow these people up.
Yeah.
And then you get to the last episode or two.
They call them homing beacons. They think they're homing beacons.
Yeah, they call them homing beacons. But like they let him be in this play.
Yeah.
And like everything's normal. And I'm sitting there thinking, this guy used children to try and murder all these people, and they're just like, sure, let's let him be King Lear, or no, it was Hamlet. They're like, and like nothing. And then like the very last episode, like he and his mom and all the kids go off on their own. And I'm like, does anybody care that this guy sent like kids to blow all these people up? Like,
I can't remember. It's been a little while since I watched those episodes.
But like they never mention like for me, if I was at that I forgot what they called that place, the airport or whatever. But like if I'm one of the members of the acting troupe, the traveler people, and the what's her name came and said, "Hey, the prophet dudes, he's going to be the main character." I'd be like, no. I mean, do you not remember a couple weeks ago when he like used kids to try and murder us?
Yeah.
Like, why would you ever let him leave with a bunch of kids? Like, I mean, that's the one thing that like I was like, I don't get it. Like, I understand because you had to bring everything together with him and mom and like all these people and working it out, but like. The fact that they just kind of forgot that, he's a.
They touch on it, so they touch on it, but it's so brief and in passing that it's unbelievable. But so everybody that you think would be opposed to it does give some moment of opposition. So like the crew of the traveling symphony, they're like, no way, we're not doing this. But then the what's the main lady's name? Not Krista. Kirsten is like, nah, we're doing that. I'm the director, and they just go along with it. They're like, okay,
okay.
And then the mother wants to do it. It's the mother is like okay with doing it because she feels like this is her opportunity to talk to her son. And then
I like that was pretty cool though, like how they talk to each other by acting out a scene.
I love that.
Very clever.
They
that was
do
very
that
good.
through the whole show, and that's my favorite thing about the show is that.
Yes.
But then the another one I love all those characters, but probably one of my favorite and like my top three. The old man that's like the king of the airport.
Yes, he's awesome.
I can't remember his name, but
I can't remember his name either.
He's like completely opposed to it, like not willing to do it at all. But then he has that accident where he gets burned or something. And then I think that's whenever he kind of changes his mind. Or maybe that happens. Actually, you know what? I think that happens before.
Yeah, because that's when the whatever the prophet dude's name is tries to. Yeah, he lights the museum on fire.
Yeah,
and the guy, which they don't show that, or at least I missed it because he lights it on fire, and then the next episode they talk about how that guy got burned.
Yeah,
trying to put the fire out, but they never show that part.
Yeah. So you know what's funny about that is Becca and I actually never saw those scenes. We watched the show whenever Elliot was taking a nap one day, and he woke up before the scene where that guy lights the museum on fire. And then the next time we watched the show, we just go to our HBO listening and we just played the next full episode, which was the second to last episode. And we were like, man, they like really skipped some time between, like, we were like, they just expect us to know what happened. Why is this guy burned? Like we were like, what happened?
Well, they didn't tell you anyway.
And then halfway through the episode, I was like, I don't think we finished the last episode. And then we went back and watched the last half of that episode and then jumped back in where we left off on the second to the last episode. But yeah, he was opposed to it, and I can't remember what happens to turn him around. But even though he was opposed to it, Kirsten and the mother was like, "We're gonna we'll win him over somehow. We're gonna keep working on it." Yeah, and then he ends up deciding not only is he gonna do it, but he's gonna be in the play. But yeah, I think that it's just I think that they're just like, what do we do with this kid? Like, are we going to try to lock him up forever? Are we going to kill him? Or are we going to try to rehabilitate him? And the best way to rehabilitate him could be this. And so I think that's why they decided to do it. It's like completely unconventional by our standards, but this is also a world where like our standards don't make sense, So
the one thing too, like, when, and maybe I may have just missed stuff, but like, at some points it's like it felt like he knew that she knew the comic the whole time. Yeah, but there's no way he would have known that she knew the comic.
Yeah, in the first episode where they meet each other, it seems like he knows that she knows.
Right, but then then they go out of the way to show that he never found her comic, and then he had no idea that she even had a comic until later when he found it. And I was like, okay, did I miss something here? And again, that was like,
I actually don't remember. I actually don't remember how that connected.
Because there was a scene where he's basically talking to her about like when she goes off on to find him, and then she finds him, and then like they're talking about the comic, but she doesn't say, oh, I have a version of it. And then I can't remember what happens. Something happened. Oh, she gets knocked out by those weird, like,
she gets
scoundrel people or whatever.
The red bandanas.
And then like I guess he searches her stuff and he finds the comic.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, you know, it kind of like, I didn't know you had the comic type thing.
Yeah.
And then that threw me because I was like, oh, I thought he knew she had the comic.
Yeah, I feel like somehow he knew, but I can't remember.
Right.
I had to go back and rewatch it.
But
I know what you mean though, because I thought he knew that she knew. I even think he tells the kids. He tells the kids that like she's like one of them.
She's one of us.
Yeah.
Right, and then like he quotes the comic.
Yeah,
I think the first night they meet each other.
Yeah,
and
yeah, because that's why she stabs him. She tells him, "How did you know? How did you know those words or whatever?" I don't know how that is not explained, but I do think that he knew. I have to go back and watch that part.
Right, right.
I want to rewatch the whole thing. I'll rewatch the whole show.
Right, that's one of those shows where you're going to pick up a lot more
on the rewatch.
The second or third time you watch it.
Yeah,
because there was definitely like I really enjoyed the show. You know, I like how they intertwined like the various time periods.
Yeah.
I would like to know more about like what happened as far as like
God, it could go. I could watch 5 more seasons of that.
Yeah, definitely. Like how did all these various people survive? I mean, they kind of made it out like, you know, like the reason the people at the airport survived was because they weren't ever exposed to anybody. But like, I don't know. It's weird because like there seems to be a lot of people, and like how I guess more of how the disease worked for me. Like
they didn't go into that at all. Yeah,
even in the high rise that they were staying in, like, you know, some people were dead in that high rise and some people were alive, and like that was the one creepy scene was like when the dude showed up at their apartment. That was crazy. Like, you know, she like you know, whenever he opens the door and's like, you know, just happens.
Yeah.
You know, someone does that, which, you know, that was good. That was kind of creepy, and
that was really good. The thing that I loved about the show was just the blurring the lines of like how, like you were talking about how the characters were talking to each other as they're playing, you know, Hamlet and King Lear and all this. The blurring of the lines between like entertainment and art and like the real world, like none of it's the real world. It's all it's all in a TV show we're watching. But like there's this piece of art that there's literally only 5 of, and 2 people get their hands on it, and how it influences those 2 people in completely 2 different ways. The same work of art, and neither of them were influenced in the way that it was intended by the creator.
Right.
And it just, and how like they needed that, like they needed art to you know, to progress their lives, you know, like they use that as a method to communicate with each other, to get through different emotions they'd been struggling with and holding on to for a long time. Like the whole show is really like just about like how, like, you know, this, like how we need art in our life, and how we all interpret it differently, and we need it for different reasons.
Well, yeah, I mean, he took that comic and somehow made it into a thing where he's strapping bombs on the kids and they're willing to sacrifice themselves.
Yeah.
And her perspective is 180 degrees different. Like
she used it as a mechanism to survive. Yeah. And to be hopeful. Yeah.
And he uses a mechanism to like get revenge and like
be spiteful. Yeah.
Be spiteful and destroy the world and all this stuff. And yeah, that was really good. That was a good perspective on the story. I'd like to read the actual comic.
Yeah, me too.
Like,
to
see how like what happens in there to how, because you know they kind of like gleam a few portions of it.
Mm-hmm.
But like it just sounds like a strange.
Yeah.
Like,
well, so the story that is an interesting thing though too, though, is you kind of do get a little bit of the storyline of the comic, because the storyline of the comic is about a little girl that meets an astronaut, a faceless astronaut. And then by the end of the story, she finds out that it is herself in the astronaut suit that went back in time to guide herself, through life.
Right.
Which is like the same thing that Kirsten is doing.
Right.
It's a really good story. And then all the moments between like Kirsten and what's the main guy's name? Or he's the main guy in the first episode and then in the last couple episodes, but he's like not in the middle. Jeevens,
yeah.
Like the moments with Jeevan and Kirsten are just like, heartbreaking. Like it's so good, man. It's so good. And like what a good, like they're both, that little girl is like such a good actor, and like so is the actor that played Jeevan. Like they were so perfect for each other for those scenes. Like it's crazy. And I like the biggest thing that I got my mom to watch the show, and she didn't make it all the way through, which it is it's not really her style TV. But the thing is that she's like, I don't care about like the other people. Like I just want to know what happens to Jeevan. And I feel like when you're midway through the season, you're like, are they ever going to touch on Jeevan again? Like what happened to that guy? And then they give you the payoff in the last couple episodes, but I would say that's probably the biggest complaint I hear about the show, is just like you get invested in those characters, and then you really don't see that story play out until like later on in like the whole show is not about them surviving. It's about Kirsten. And then she just has her memories of them. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I understand that they're probably not going to make another season, because this was just like this was the book. What else they're going to do? I don't know if it would be as good if they just made up more to the story that wasn't there. But if they did, I would watch it.
yeah, definitely. I enjoyed. Overall, I thought it was a fantastic little story. It was so good.
I'm definitely going to watch it again and try to pick up more on it. But man, I think that's a wrap.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm continue listening to some of the book, and then hopefully figure out what happens with all these strange worlds and characters in this thing. And
so
I'm very interested. It's a good foundation so far.
So are we going to do In by next week?
Yeah, we'll do that.
All right, it'll be a good break for me. I'll listen to it.
Like I said, it's short. It's not like, I mean, it's a short story, obviously, but I can't remember exactly. It's probably no more than 40, 50 pages at most. It's in, like I said, look for Just After Sunset.
Mm-hmm.
And again, in that audio part, it's, one big thing. So you'll just have to kind of skip through it and find where it starts. But, yeah, I mean, I think you'll enjoy it. It's very, very good.
All right. We'll do it. Talk about it next week.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. All right. Look forward to next week. Listening to In.
Yeah. Listen to In.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Just after M.